Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks very much for coming along this early morning session looking at Agriculture 5.0 and what we're doing to try and deliver the existing and new technologies that will help us get to Agriculture 5.0. Now, in reality, agricultural revolutions aren't new. They've been happening for a very long time. But each of these agricultural revolutions, as we've gone through time, have brought improvements in crop production, increases in yield, and reduction in the amount of labour that's been required. And in the very beginning, traditional agriculture really was only manual labour and relied on natural elements like sunlight and rain, around 12,000 years ago. Then we get to Agriculture 2.0, around 100 years ago, where we're looking at mechanisation coming in, the green revolution, the advent of crop breeding, the introduction of nutrition, the introduction of agrochemicals, and the massive increases in yield and reduction in labour that helped to bring. Move on to around 3 decades ago, we're looking at Agriculture 3.0, where we were optimising those systems using GPS, GIS, and machine learning, and we were able then to bring that in and look at how we could use weather predictions, map areas, look at variable rate applications of nutrition and agrochemicals so that we could optimise what we were doing and reduce waste. And this area for me personally is quite important, as this was where I started my research career. I did some of the very first research looking at GPS, variable rate application of nutrition to potato fields for Harper Adams. And for me, that doesn't feel like it was 3 decades ago. And now we're moving into this digital revolution, so Agriculture 4.0, where we've got robotics, AI, big data analytics. We can have increasing automation on farm. We're looking at where AI can take all of that big data and they can analyse it in a way that we can't and pull it all together to give us increased analytics and allow us to focus on the things that really matter in terms of being able to optimise the crop decision making that we have to do and produce crops more sustainably with financial and environmental benefits. Now, within that Agriculture 4.0, Agrii has been looking at various different projects, and this one is a very good example. So this was a Marks & Spencer's consortium that we got involved with in 2024, where we were harnessing artificial intelligence, robotics, and using that big data to grow a field of parsnips autonomously. And Agrii's role within that was in crop monitoring and agronomic inputs. And by doing this, Marks & Spencer's got some really good results. So they saw a reduction in carbon dioxide equivalents of 46% and an increase in the highest grade of parsnips by around 15%. And that has really encouraged Marks & Spencer's to look at how they could use AI further, how they can use the big data and how they can use robotics for crop production. That was a really good success story. However, some of the other projects that Agrii were involved with, where we strictly relied on the technology and the predictions and the risks to tell us what we should be doing with that crop, were not as successful as the farmer-agronomist combination. And when we look back on it, a lot of the reason for that is because when you've got that long history with what's happening in fields, understanding crop genetics, understanding the inputs that could potentially be required, you learn much more quickly than AI and machine learning has already harnessed. So we can use what the data provides, but we haven't got to the stage where AI and machine learning can provide back that information yet. Therefore, we're really looking at moving towards this Agriculture 5.0. And the whole benefit of Agriculture 5.0 is placing the human back at the centre and as an integral part of that crop production system. We can collate all of the data from various different technologies and we can put it all on one platform. We can use the AI to analyse that data and look for trends and look for risks. We can do that in real time, and we can supply that information back to the agronomist and the farmer. But that then allows them to make the final decisions, bringing in that historic knowledge that is so very valuable. Agriculture 5.0 will also bring together multiple different partners. So it will enhance how our businesses interact together and how we collaborate. And that's really important for Agrii today as we announce our partnership with TELUS. In 2025 then, at our digital technology farms, we put together some trials work to look at how we could use all of that data, all of the sensors, the satellites, the drones, and bring that all together to help influence the agronomic decisions that we made on that farm. Now, the first thing that will always happen when we start to use technology is there's an increase in the input costs because we have to pay for the technology that we're going to use to deliver that data to us that we're then going to analyse. So we did have around about a 7% increase in input costs. However, by using that data, we were able to increase yield by around 0.8 tonnes per hectare. And we were able to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide equivalents. We were also able to reduce the amount of nitrogen applied by really focusing on the areas of the field that required that nitrogen. And that gave us an increase in gross margins of around £137 per hectare. So we really were looking at enhancing both environmental and financial benefits by utilising all of the data and the technology and bringing it together with our farmers and agronomists. Agrii's current strategy really does align with Agriculture 5.0. And really within this, it underpins Agrii's commitment to invest in technology and systems. We're investing in areas like our bespoke glasshouse at Throws Farm, where we're able to really throughput trials much more quickly and therefore get the results to field much more quickly. So all farmers will benefit from those results. We're also investing in collaborating with third parties to enable our customers to benefit from everything being present on one platform and the benefits that can bring us in the future. And that brings me then to introduce Ben Hatton from TELUS to explain our partnership.
Good morning, and thank you, Ruth. So just a few slides from me, and I'll hand back to Ruth to carry on the rest of the presentation. But in terms of TELUS, who we are, it's a global company, and we've got lots of business interests around TELUS Digital, healthcare, and most importantly, for what we're talking about today, our focus on agriculture. For us, we are a technical partner, a digital enabler, and we do that in various different areas around the globe, in various different technologies. The UK, we recognise, has a very specific requirement from tool sets, integrations and partnerships, and that's why we're really excited to be working with Agrii on this. And in terms of exactly what we're working on, this is about bringing two fantastic, powerful tool sets together to really add a greater value from the sum of its parts. So we're talking about bringing the TELUS crop management digital system and integrating that with Contour from Agrii. What we actually provide with TELUS crop management is an integrated, compliant traceability, assurance and workflow tool that allows information to be exchanged, standardised and really sort of turbocharged in that farm environment to allow farmers and advisors and those who are supporting that industry to make more of the technology and more of the human assets that are available on farm. This is all about really sort of driving advice through to action and then allowing it to be used in insightful ways. So we are really sort of excited to sort of leverage on what we can do to support this partnership.
And I will say that with that, Agrii is really excited about all of this because we'll be able to do the back and forth swapping of data within our systems, Contour and TELUS crop management.
So in terms of why we're doing this, I sort of reference some of the scope of the business, but one of the most important things is we see ourselves as an independent technology provider. We don't provide that agronomic advice. We don't sell machines on farm. That's not really what we do. Our focus is about what we really class as, probably not the most exciting word, but doing the dull stuff, but doing it really well. Data standardizations, integrations, looking at technologies and how they can be placed within our own workflow tools, but also within others to support that connection, digitization, and optimization of information that's available on farm and within the industry. And really trying to make sure that that can be exchanged in controlled, secure, comfortable ways for those who want to benefit from it. So for us, partnerships are really, really important. As a company, we have got great scope. We don't want to do it all, and we shouldn't be doing it all. We should be working with key regional partners to ensure that we are making the best for the farm decisions. And to give you a little bit more of a flavour of some of those areas that we're working on, you can see from the infographics on the screen various functions from the agriculture industry, and I'm sure many of them recognisable. But again, we have some great examples of where we digitise and enable those partners and those functions to operate. And we do that in a complementary way, and always with our mutual customers at the key focus of what we're trying to achieve here. I think the other thing is that it provides flexibility and it provides opportunity and options for those who are using the tools and benefiting from that partnership. For us, we very focus heavily on innovation, implementation, and how we use our applications to their best ability. And this is really what we sort of focus on about allowing our agriculture, in the broadest sense, to achieve opportunities, address challenges now that may be present in the future. And so with that, just on my last slide here, just focusing specifically on the Agrii relationship and the partnership, this is really about supporting farmers, as I mentioned. And we've got a history and a pedigree of doing this through the acquisition of various companies and functions that brought TELUS together, whether it's Farm Plan Gatekeeper or some of the Muddy Boots tools. So we're not new to this. This is not a sort of a new innovation. We have a long-standing pedigree and a great team behind us, and we're really excited to bring this partnership to life. And for us, it's about being passionate, as I said, about doing what we can do to add value to the Agrii relationship.
Thanks, Ben. And so really what we're doing is we're leveraging the enhanced capabilities that our partnership with TELUS will provide us. That will allow us to continue looking at our smart connected farm vision, where we will have one platform that collates all of the data sources together in real time. We will use artificial intelligence to analyse that data and support our agronomic decisions, but they will be made on farm. We will be able to reduce the amount of time agronomists spend field walking, which will allow more time for strategic decision making, all according to the customer's objectives. We will be able to take all of the technology and the data that's coming around as Agriculture 4.0 and take that through to this more human-centric element of Agriculture 5.0. Therefore, we are thrilled to be in partnership with TELUS, and we really are looking forward and welcoming Agriculture 5.0 coming along. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Ruth and Ben. Thank you very much. We'll just now ask our panel to come up to the front and take their seats, and we'll start to delve into some of the questions. Just whilst they do that, has anybody got any burning questions that they are literally wanting to ask right now? Is it still a bit early? It's still a bit early, is it? I can see that, yes, it is. It's still a bit early. I'm just still waking up. Okay. Well, look, keep those questions in your mind because we will be asking those questions. So to start us off, what I'd like the panel to do is actually introduce themselves because we've got quite an array of real technical knowledge up here as well as farming knowledge as well. So, yeah, Matt, do you want to start us off? Who are you and what do you do?
Morning, I'm Matt Fry. I farm around 1,600 hectares of varying crops with Agrii as our main agronomic advisor.
Hi there. Good morning. I'm Roy Willis. I'm an agronomist with Agrii, and I'm delighted that the human element of this 5.0 is still kind of important.
Morning all, Jonny Kerley, Product Manager at Origin Digital, so responsible for managing the teams that develop our software platforms, grew up on farm, so hopefully not just some techie that doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, good morning all. Jonathan Trotter, I'm Agrii's Technology Trials Manager, and I sit in Agrii's research team. It's my job to horizon scan for new technologies, put them through a testing process, work out how they work, find the value, and hopefully increase adoption of technology on farm.
Good morning again. So Ben Hatton, Sales and Key Account Manager within the TELUS agriculture business, working alongside a colleague of teams who sell, support our solutions on farm to advisors and throughout the industry, and been involved with this for around about 20 years now.
Very good. So last night at dinner, we did have a very connected human conversation about Agriculture 5, and it was fascinating because of the different roles that the panel have. So let's bring that to life. But we asked, and most of you, I think, or a good number of you actually answered a poll that we put out there. Rachel did that. And the question was, well, okay, the title is, well, why British farming must act now when it comes to Agriculture 5. But the actual poll that was put out said, well, is agriculture prepared to accept and adapt to the technological changes compared to other industries, as others are? And 4% of you said not yet, but getting there. Okay? About 36% said not yet. The pace is too fast. And nobody said they're not sure. They don't know. So there we are. So there's a degree of uncertainty there. So let's get to our first question and find out, well, what does the panel think? And let's hear what they have to say. So, Jonny, how close are we to actually getting to Agriculture 5 right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, we saw from Ruth's slides there that the evolution of agriculture is a scale from 1 to 5. In the UK, we've definitely still got farming businesses that are at 2.0. We've got farming businesses that are already at 5.0. They've utilised some of the technologies from 4.0. They've put them on farm and they've retained the human element there. So they're already doing it. I would say at the moment we're at the early adopter stage. So you've got the bell curve of adoption. We're at the beginning of 5.0. But it could take many decades to get the majority of farming businesses well into 5.0.
Yeah. And Roy, as an agronomist, what are the gaps in us achieving that? What can get in the way of us getting towards that Agriculture 5?
Well, obviously, there are a lot of challenges along the way to achieve this. I mean, during the winter and the early spring, we can make lots of plans and lots of decisions based on where we think we're going to go through that growing season. And then it's absolutely vital that we develop those and tweak them and adapt them depending on how the season, how the crops, what the weather is thrown at us. So we need to be able to make decisions quickly, and we need to be able to get that information to the wheels on the ground, to our growers, also quickly, and it needs to be reliable and always be there readily and available so that it is adopted, because there's nothing more challenging or frustrating for growers for the conditions are perfect to go and they can't go and then they don't adopt it. So I think time is probably the summary of our challenge, and obviously this collaboration now is really exciting, because this hopefully is now going to facilitate our ability to move that data quickly from creation to out on farm and being applied.
And that data, do we all believe that we understand what AI is? Well, I'm going to say, me too. So, Jonny, you can ask, I know you've been rehearsing this answer, but actually, how do we define AI?
So AI is technology that allows systems to, at least some extent, mimic the human brain. So there needs to be at least some element of recognition, problem solving, learning, motion or vision. And we are in an absolute AI bubble at the moment. There's loads of solutions that are labelled AI that aren't AI at all. AI is being used to solve problems that don't need AI. And just to take a simple example, how many of us have an AI-powered washing machine? Well, if that's just weighing the clothes to dispense the powder, that's not AI. That's just a simple formula. If it's using vision or something else to detect the types of clothing you've got in there and set the program, that is AI, because it's mimicking the problem solving or the decision making of the human brain in some way.
That's very interesting, the washing machine. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, mine is very much human operated. It very much is. I don't think there's any AI involved. Or maybe there is, I don't know. I'm going to investigate that, Jonny. But what about other industries? What are other industries doing? And we had a big discussion about this last night. Construction industry, defence, etc. And Ben, I think you're the right person to ask. Or maybe, dare I ask you, because I know it's a long answer, or is it? But how are other industries using AI right now?
Well, try and keep this one shorter. I think they're using it in different ways and for different use cases. But I think what we see from a technology provider, and we have a department geared up specifically for AI, as I'm sure most businesses now do these days. But we look at the actual sort of service provision of those tools and how we actually can create those tools to embed them within our own tool sets across the various sectors that we work within. For us, what we're seeing at the moment, though, is really about trying to unlock more human potential within those businesses. I know there's obviously the challenge around replacing labour with some of this technology and tools. We don't see it like that. I'm sure we obviously have to be very mindful of that and how we deploy that and use that. But for us and how we use that in our tool sets within agriculture and in other areas that we operate in, it's about trying to unlock more human potential and free up that sort of asset that is available in all these businesses rather than replace it.
And just in terms of the use of that AI, who here in the room, just hands up if you think that the answer to the question of, do you think there's risks associated with adopting AI? Are there risks for the business? So one or two, oh, crikey, now one's put their hand up, everyone is. Right, okay, so a big number of you. Jonathan, is there a risk for the business in adopting more AI?
The first thing that I instill into our agronomists is that AI won't take your job, but someone using AI will. I think that's really powerful when you think about that and how, when we do use technology, how that can empower us to make better decisions and be more effective than we already are. But yeah, there are definitely risks. You've got to go about it in the right way and don't expose yourself to just blindly listening to what the technology is maybe telling you. You need to interpret that and kind of get the output that you think is right with the data that you've been provided with.
Let's focus on the wins. Matt, if you could pass the microphone. So, what are the wins for the farmer or grower, potentially, do you feel?
Well, I see that 5.0 can make 4.0 work more seamlessly. Yeah. So we've got a huge amount of information that we gather from the machines doing the work, be it a combine or be it a sprayer, be it a satellite looking at the crops through the season. The sheer volume of information coming at us in a short window means that we can't make best use of that information and we can't translate that information into actions on the ground. If we can make the system work and so that we can make the best use of the information to change our decisions, or even it may reinforce the decision that we've already made. If it can do that, then there's a real return to the grower, who at the end of the day is fronting up the cost of investing in all of the growing costs.
And Roy, do you think there's big wins, available there for the grower, the farmer?
I think absolutely there are wins without doubt, and hopefully with the help of AI and these technologies, we will be able to confirm that and look back at what we've done, because we all we all make decisions on the day in terms of if we're talking about advising growers or growers when they're actually working, and we don't always look back at what that did and how the results are concluded. We know the big figure in terms of yield, let's say, But if we're trying to break these fields up into very small parcels and small areas of fields, you know, we need to be able to have a look into that. So, you know, historically, you would think about variable applications. You know, let's even up this field. You know, we've got a 10-hectare field, and what do we want to do? We want to even it up. Well, we don't, do we? Because we want the areas that are doing 11 tonne, we want those to push on and do 12 and 12.5 tonnes. And those areas that are doing 7, we want, if we're talking of winter wheat, we want to look at can we get 8 out of that? Can we get 8.5? Or should we do something different with it? Yeah. What are the limiting factors? And I think that will help us in terms of getting the information more readily available to us, and therefore we can spend more time looking at that as opposed to digging out the information and then suddenly it's next season and we all move on.
Yeah. Well, we've got a roving mic. Let's just very quickly ask if anybody can detail or share some of the wins that you think are there from Agriculture 5. So who has any examples or thoughts as to what the wins could be for the farmer or grower? Chris, do you? Oh, here we are, you've got a microphone, because I mean, I know that's putting you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I think it's interesting. Matt's probably highlighted it for me, is the next stage in the development of using technology on farm is pulling that data together in real time to make decisions that are going to affect the crop that we're looking at now. It was really interesting yesterday, the gentleman from the James Hutton Institute in particular talking about predictive modelling of crop yield. And I think that's one area that collaboration, use of data, how can you now look at a crop in early January and say, okay, what's the potential of that crop, given its establishment, given where it is now? And then as I go through the year, based on the economics, because that's the other thing we can't forget, is that we've got to produce a profitable yield. It's not just getting the 12.5 tonnes without worrying about, is that going to produce a profit? I think that will help Matt and Roy make decisions in season, saying, okay, this crop can potentially produce 12 tonnes, therefore it's worth spending an extra 10, 15 pounds a hectare on a fungicide, for example. Or, do you know what, we're in another dry spring, the potential is dropping off, we're going to have to come back on our spend because we're not going to hit that 12 tonnes of yield. So I think it's probably, to Roy's point and to Matt to a certain extent, is in-season decision-making based on where do we think that crop's going to achieve and how can we help it achieve it given economics and climate.
Yeah. Anyone else got any other thoughts? I know there's people here, veterinarians, training. Any other one other person got a? Oh, look, there we are. I'm glad we had a 20-minute chat when you first arrived, because I knew you were there. I knew you were there.
He was looking hard.
There we are.
Andrew Palmer, Head of Agriculture at Lantra. The opening slide showed how farming had changed over the decades and then the generations. Technology and AI seems to be changing single-digit annual timelines now. How do we keep up with training and awareness and raising the profile for that?
Yeah, who's going to ask that one?
I'll just put a small bit in. I mean, keeping up with the tech on machines and back in the office is a struggle. And it does involve a lot of time to get the best out of that. Machinery dealers, some of the more switched on machinery dealers are running schools, which with the GPS and the AI side of the tractors, which is absolutely invaluable because there's so much on these modern machines that you can use. More often than not, the driver actually doesn't use literally any of it. And so you've invested all this money in this machine, and then you're not getting the best out of it. Just coming back to something that Chris was saying, the other thing about perhaps predictive yields is we are going to have to justify all of our inputs on an environmental scale. So phosphate, nitrogen, ag chems. If we can say we've got a tool that has told us what this is potentially going to achieve, and we can then justify our use of inputs, and along with that, it's carbon. You know, the more time goes on, the more we're going to have to reduce our carbon. If we can tailor our inputs because we know what we're going to achieve, that's going to be very helpful.
Very, very good. Oh, well, you're going to add something, Jonny? Go on.
Well, I think I was going to pass the mic along to Jonathan, but I was just going to chip in that you know, there is a huge amount for farmers to learn with a lot of the technology. And I think that's why it's so important that we develop simple to use systems. So, you know, at Origin, we're kept honest by our large teams of agronomists and CIS on the ground, honest in terms of the problems we're solving. Are we solving them in the right way? And are they simple and self-intuitive to use? And that is what we strive to do.
So let's move on a step, and that's very, very interesting. Jonathan, how are Agrii and TELUS going to actually help farmers adopt and adapt to Agriculture 5?
Yeah, I think when you talk to anyone about adoption of technology, one of the first words that comes to mind is interoperability. And what we've put forward today with the TELUS connection with Agrii and Contour is that we're actually going a significant step towards solving the interoperability problem that farmers have with adopting technology. So that's a huge step forward for the industry, in my opinion. But something that people maybe aren't aware of is the work that Agrii do in the background to test and trial these kind of new technologies. So I'm talking about robots, drones, sensors, things like that. We have a digital technology farm network across the UK, and we specifically use these sites to integrate technologies into, test and evaluate them, pull out the figures, see if the gross margin was better, worse, what the environmental impacts were. Those figures that you've seen today all came out of the DTF network that we have. So there's a huge amount of work that we're doing in the background to make sure that anything that comes through that infrastructure and gets onto farm has already been tested and has been filtered, and so that farms aren't working with technologies that just don't hit the mark.
Ben, what would you add?
I was sort of thinking as we were getting that previous answer, that a great example of what we're trying to do is with TELUS Crop Management, the latest farm management tool. It's responding to what we've been told from our numerous customer segments over the years, from using our legacy tool sets. There's features and functions within those that have extreme benefits. There's often some drawbacks as well with that. As TELUS has grown as a key UK player now over recent years, we really want to make sure that we can answer what our customers tell us day in, day out about easy-to-use tools that are integrated and work efficiently with the various other functions and tool sets that are available on farm, because it provides choice. It doesn't lock those customers in. And I think now more than ever, I mean, partnerships and that collaborative approach is what's so important. There's so many challenges within the industry, and I think siloing and locking up those interests, it really actually just competes against everyone, not least the farm interest.
Yeah. And just coming back to all of you here, you know, is this just for the larger farm? Or is it also accessible for the smaller farm? Sorry. You're going to ask a question. Go on, please.
I thought you wanted some.
No, go on.
Yeah. Let's assume we're 5 years down the line and you've got your product all up and shiny and it's all ready to launch. What are going to be your challenges to get farmers to adopt it, and what are your strategies to help them get over those concerns?
Who's going to answer that question? It's very good. Thank you.
I'll start as I have the mic. Yeah, absolutely. Adoption, usability, and ongoing development of any of our tools is absolutely key. Is why we have support teams, development teams to support that. Our vision is long term. We're not just looking for the next 5 years. We're here as a key player in the industry. But we don't want to do it all. And I think that partnership and integration, that feedback between who we're working with and ultimately the customers is so very important to make sure that, yes, we're setting customers up and the farm business for success today, but we're also scaling those solutions and tools ready for the challenges which I'm sure will be coming tomorrow. Some we're aware of, some I'm sure which will be curveballs as they come in.
Any other questions on this specific area? Yes, here we are. Just pass the mic to you there.
Hello. I don't know if mine's a question or a comment. So I'm an Agrii Environment Advisor. A couple of things I've written down from what's been said. Less time in the field, more time to look at the data, and using the AI to do the problem solving and decision making. Like, that sounds incredibly boring if that were my job. And you know, that is part of the fun, going out, looking, being creative. Sort of how do you see it working with that human element, you know, with well-being, getting out onto the land? We have issues with people being disconnected already from the rural sector, if we become data processors, is that what you see, that we will be data processors? How are we still going to be connected to the land, I suppose, is my question.
I suppose
Very good question. Jonathan, do you want to start that off? And then I'll come to Roy and Matt there. Yeah.
my first comment to that would be that actually you might find that we're spending more time with farmers because of the technology. So actually we're reducing the loneliness side of thing for an agronomist or the farmer, because we're not out in the field in their own silos. We're actually working with them around the kitchen table, having that conversation with them, which we maybe wouldn't have been able to do because we're just too busy otherwise. And I think, just quickly, the other element here is that actually the less walking element might be that because we're sending a drone out instead, or there's some really cool elements to that actually could make the job really interesting from my point of view.
And we've got a real client-farmer relationship between your two selves. So how could that work in the future? I mean, really interesting that you're both here, actually, both looking at each other. I mean, they did go for a beer last night after we all went in, so there must be a good relationship there.
I think, firstly, I definitely agree with Jonathan that we will be able to spend more time talking to our growers actually in more detail. Now, we may be talking about data-driven evidence, but it's still a subject that we both have pride in, and I think we need to be careful that we don't. We need to understand that there is an emotional side to farming and to farmers, and there's a lot of pride in what people do as an advisor and as growers. You know, there is nothing like looking at a crop of your crop and appreciating that it looks really good for whatever reason, whether it's clean or, you know, it's full of potential and all the reasons that we farm and the challenges when it doesn't quite go right. You know, what can we do next year to improve it? I mean, that's a massive part of farming and agriculture and production. And as I say, I think there will be more time to do that actually with the grower.
Matt?
I mean, we always talk about what we want to do at the start of the season in terms of, you know, where we see what we did last year was right and where we see where it was wrong. And if the fact that the AI is gathering data and processing data and giving us a list of options to discuss, it's that process of sitting down with people that you trust and people that you've worked with and discussing what the AI has thrown up at you, that you can then, you know, it's actually making, I would say it's in its best case, it will mean that you spend more time interacting with humans. So I would say it would possibly reduce disconnect. I mean, I get where you're coming from because you might think you just sat in a little cell looking at data. I don't see that. And the point about small farms, ag technology is so expensive that it could exclude small farms. But as we are now, a modern tractor can exclude a small farm. So cooperative working, contract farming, one of my growers is 30 hectares, but she still has the access to the latest technology through Agrii and through our equipment. So actually, I think there's the potential that the smaller growers can benefit just the same as everyone else.
And Jonny, just picking up on that, can this technology be accessible to the smaller enterprise?
Yeah, I think Matt's covered it there, really. Not necessarily through their own purchases, but through increased collaboration. I mean, it's the same with a lot of these technologies. The more they scale, the price point comes down. And I think, you know, as I said earlier, it's going to take decades to get the majority of ag businesses onto 5.0. And I mean, look how long it took us, 10,000 years to get from 1.0 to 2.0. We can't realistically expect 5.0 to happen overnight. And, you know, there's so many unknowns. There's going to be so many evolutions in the technology. The more we push the technology, the more available it will be to all.
Sure. Okay, I've got a question at the back. I want to step through a couple of key questions, and then we'll open it right up to the floor, because I can see there's a bit of angst to ask a question. What's your question, sir?
Yes, James Davies, AF Group. There's a lot of talk about creating a level playing field and everyone having access. You just spoke about small farms being able to use this kind of technology. Would this be an Agrii-owned product? Would you only for agri agronomists or agri serviced farms, or is this something you're kind of looking at opening up to everybody that can use that, like the likes of Omnia and Hutchinson's? It's their product, but anyone can use that.
Interesting. We were talking about this to some extent last night. So, Jonathan, maybe you're primed to answer the question, or are you?
It's actually probably more of a question for Johnny, wouldn't you say?
Okay,
with Johnny being Origin Digital.
Pass the microphone across.
Well, yeah, and I could probably pass to someone in commercial who would answer it much better than I will. But the systems we are developing, we want to be open to all of it. There's got to be some element of you being an agri customer to access that technology, but how we license that software going forwards is probably open to discussion, and come and talk to us.
Yeah. Okay. And there's another question here, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So how can farmers that are following Agriculture 5.0 provide a challenge for the companies that are developing seeds, developing traits, for them to be more responsive, to act quicker for the challenges we'll face in the future?
Oh, interesting question. Everyone's looking, that's very good. Who to ask? Jonathan, yes.
Okay. So I think, David, you're picking up on the research element, perhaps that Agrii kind of have in the background there, and the research that we're doing in those other areas to align that with an integrated approach to not just technology on its own, but actually integrating that with our knowledge and understanding on kind of the variety side of things, or the genetic side of things, and that kind of full picture of it's not just one piece of the puzzle. You need to be looking at the whole puzzle to farm in the correct way.
And that links in very nicely to actually our next question, which is about, can Agriculture 5 actually drive changes in farming practices? Matt, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think we are being pushed to change our practices right now. And I don't necessarily think that it's 5 that's going to push the changes. It's Agriculture 5.0 that's going to enable us to make the changes that society, legislation is demanding that we make. As I said earlier, that is using fewer resources to produce more output, and at the same time doing it in a socially acceptable way. And we know that we can grow crops if our methods are those that might be used in other parts of the world. We're trying to grow crops, produce food, produce energy under a much more constrained situation. And if it enables us to do that, I think it will be responding to rather than driving.
Yeah, and Ruth's slides showed very much a financial benefit to the bottom line there. Can you see that in terms of adopting some of these technologies?
Undoubtedly. I mean, we do a lot of, every year we do a few what we call challenge fields, where we push that field, and we don't push it in a research way, but a commercial way. So we're using the best technology that we've got today in terms of satellite data, soil scanning, variable rate seed plans, variable rate nutrition, and to see how far we can push that while still maintaining a very commercial output. And talking about how we can respond, how the 5 can feed back to the seed breeding and so on. I mean, it's about getting information back from farms to Agrii, and then through Agrii to the developers, because we've got loads of information on farm. What can we do with that? How can we use that to improve what we're being sold in terms of varieties, ag chems, but two-way process of information. The information that we get from our combine, or from and we can send that back to breeders, so that we can see what we've achieved in the real world situation rather than an R&D situation.
And Ben, picking up on that then, how can you assure the growers, the industry, that actually that can be done seamlessly without issues of it being interrupted? How can we make it work?
Well, it's not easy, but I think we are progressing all the time, learning, developing, and evaluating what's working. Sometimes it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. You have the vision and the drive for these tools, and then you've got the technology around it that can support it. Whether it's internet connectivity, for example, it sometimes sort of has a bit of a challenge to some customers. But I think we've seen through the advent and adopting of a smartphone how significant that has an impact and changing the portability of the business and taking the information and data outside. So we focus very closely on the technology that's available, as well as our internal technology and how that can be used and deployed. obviously, it's got to add up, it's got to work, it's got to be commercially viable. But I think most importantly, and it was mentioned earlier, it has to be commercially adoptable by the end users. It has to financially add up for them. But not just that, it has to add significant value on farm.
And is Agriculture 5 something that the agricultural industry can actually be excited about? You talked about the prospect of you can see that benefit on farm. Is this something that we can be excited about? And in a way, that's our final question to round it up before we ask all of you, because I can hear concerns. You know, does this take me back into a place where I'm just looking at data? Is there a real benefit we can take a real interest in here?
I think it's absolutely exciting. I mean, I find problem solving and solutionizing exciting. And, you know, there's so many challenges in farming at the moment that we have so little control over, so many external influences. So we need to embrace the best technologies we have to solve the problems or the challenges that we can solve. And that is incredibly exciting. You know, there is a large sense of the unknown. We don't know where it's going to go. But, you know, the use of AI can be incredibly helpful. You know, we've discussed the benefits of it, and I think it's super exciting to see where we can go over the next decade or so. I think, you know, certainly in some aspects, hopefully farming will be unrecognisable in 10 years' time to what it is now.
Yeah. And as a room, for all of you, who feels that genuinely there is something to be excited about here with Agriculture 5? I love the way one person puts up the hand and others follow. And before I make sure you do, okay. What for you? What's the prospect that's exciting?
Well, lots of assets. So Mark Buckingham from Bayer. I think we're using it throughout our business on looking for better chemistry molecules, you know, designing them rather than just testing products in plant breeding. We're using it very extensively. Breeding's all about big numbers, and data's been a huge part of that for a long time. We've got there are applications in the environment. You know, we've got some AI training cameras looking at insects, and you can identify different species of insects with a properly trained AI. So it helps on the environment as well. So there's huge numbers of applications, and I think it's not about getting. It's about the AI works on the data to give options and solutions to the growers, like the panel was saying. So it's not. It doesn't take you into numbers and spreadsheets, and you know the idea is the AI does that and then gives you some clearer options. And I think it's developing fast all the time across agriculture. We've got to keep the other bits, you know, in place as well. So we still need, just a shameless plug, if I may. This year there'll be a GB renewal for glyphosate, the 52-year-old molecule, and the government will have a look at it and we'll hopefully get a new license. But you know, we've got to keep all the existing tools in place. But at the same time, AI is helping, you know, develop new tools faster and you know, give growers better information about how to use those tools.
Absolutely.
I think, Tony, if I could just add to that, the really exciting thing from my point of view is with that future technology piece. I see the Contour TELUS integration piece as kind of a vehicle, and the technology that we next identify in terms of whether it's a drone, a robot, a sensor, if we can then integrate that into this one place, that's going to significantly increase the adoption potential on farm for technology and really get quite exciting.
So now I'm sensing some excitement in the room. Any questions for the panel? We've got 5 minutes. You can be challenging if you like. Good. I love that. Good luck, team. I like that. Okay, what's the question?
So I think we've been collecting data on farm for years, from yield maps to soil maps, and I think there's sort of that was fashionable. It then became fashionable to say, we're collecting all this data, what do we do with it? What do we want from it? And I think actually my challenge is we didn't know how to process it on farm. We collected it and there wasn't the expertise. So how do we best get the expertise from the likes of you to know what we actually want from that data rather than just what we think we want from it? Are we at risk of missing a trick?
Just a quick one, you know, in terms of that data collection piece, you can't go back and collect data that you didn't collect. We don't know how the future's going to evolve. We don't know what technologies are going to be available in the future. We don't know what challenges we're going to need to solve. If you can, collect the data. it might come in useful. Data in itself is not very useful. It needs to be turned into information and served back to the user to inform decision making. Yeah.
Ben, maybe you can add something to that because of your experiences across other industries as well, which I know you've got a great deal of. Is there something we can also learn about how data can be used and answering that question?
Well, keeping it close to home to agriculture, I mean, through our experience, we've had customers who have used our recording systems to really just tick a compliance, traceability box. And then all of a sudden, because they've had that information stored and managed in the right way, sometimes it does need some cleaning, absolutely. But then a decision will come to that farm business, well, actually, could you actually then run some financials against that? Because we're trying to look for, I don't know, a loan, for example, or look at the viability of that business. And all of a sudden, that good underpinning information, standardization of, field, farm, crop, variety, for example, with a little bit of extra data then layered on top of that, it then starts having exponential benefits. So John is absolutely right. Record as much as you can. I mean, and I think a conversation is always the best way to start with. Where does the farm business, if we're focusing at that level, where does that need to be in a few years' time, and what does success look like for that business? Because invariably, the answers from that will actually sort of spill over into, well, this is how we should be capturing data. You're right, though. What do we capture for tomorrow? Well, I think using the tools and systems to sort of bring that information together with a vision in the future is absolutely key. I am sure there's going to be some data cleansing, standardization that's going to be required of some of that historic data. I know through this particular partnership, we're looking at standardization of different data sets and how that can really sort of take some of that burden away that's unfortunately in the system. AI is a great tool that could actually start helping make some meaningful understanding of that archived data. So I don't think it'd be easy, but I think access to a repository of information that either is on farm or available now or potentially sitting there that could be tapped into and used at a later point is going to be key.
Can I just add quickly as well? I mean, we've got some large farming businesses that are big enough and diverse enough in their operations to actually employ data analysts within their own team. That's clearly not available to some of the smaller businesses, but AI can replace that. And in that sense, it is actually bringing those services down to the smaller growers that haven't perhaps got the outlay to make instead of employing a person to do that.
Chris, you've got the microphone there.
Yeah, Tony, I was just going to say it's as much about the question you ask AI as it is the data. So I think we've got to learn how to ask the right questions for you and your business rather than saying, we've got this data, this is what you want. And I think that's a subtle change that we're seeing. And we're seeing that. We're trialing an AI agent in the business at the moment. And actually the bit that we're struggling with is how do you ask the questions in the right way to get the sort of answers that you want? So I would come back to you and say, what are the key things for your business that you don't have the answers for today? And can we use data that you might have collected, or it might be data that we can collect elsewhere to help you solve those problems?
Thank you, Chris. And really, to close the session, I think for me, the word that you used, Ben, was meaningful use of that archived data, that it's a value to Matt's business on that farm, to Roy as the agronomist and the team overall. That's it for our discussion here this morning, but thank you ever so much for the questions, the challenges, and of course to our panel and speakers. Thank you very much indeed.